Hi Trailblazers, Mrs. Showalter here, and this lesson is about dichotomous keys and classification. So scientists are always looking at characteristics of items and trying to classify them and put them in groups based on their characteristics. So the first most important thing that we can do is make observations. We look at things, we listen to things, we observe, and then we can start making classifications or separating things based on what we know about them. So we're going to use dichotomous keys as one way, a visual way, to divide things into categories, specifically 2 categories at a time, to show their characteristics. So let me show you what I mean. So I've got these pens on my desk, and there are several ways that I could split these up. So one characteristic that I could use to divide these is whether or not they have red ink. So these 2 have red ink over here, and these have black ink. So that is one way that I can divide them, is ink color. Okay. Another way I can divide them is whether they are a Sharpie or not. So these all say Sharpie on the side and these do not. Another way I can split them up is do they have a cap or not? So these 4 do have a cap and these don't. Another way I can split them up is, are they a ballpoint pen or more of a felt tip or marker pen? So ballpoint, felt tip, or marker pen. Okay, so once I have split these up, the idea behind a dichotomous key is that you split them into 2 categories, and then you continue to break them apart based on their characteristics until you have 1 in each category. So let's look over here. We've got 2 in this category, so we need to split it up even further. Well, one way we can split it up is this is black ink and this is red ink. Now they are in their own individual category, and so I could go over here and I can start to split these up. Is it a fine tip or a wide tip? Okay, this is a wider tip and these are fine point, so I can split them up. Okay, now this is in its own category. Now these are still in the same category. They are both felt tip pens and they are fine point, so they're together in that category. So I want to try to split those up. Well, one way I can do that is red ink versus black ink. And so now everything's in its own category. So now if I bring in a new item, a pen that we've just discovered out in the wild, well, it's a ballpoint and it has black ink, so it's going to be a cousin of this pen. They would be together in that category, and now they're related. Okay? That's the idea behind a dichotomous key. So we're just looking at characteristics, and we just try to split them apart into 2 groups at a time until they are in their own space. So another thing I can split with a dichotomous key is candy. So I have some candy here, lots of different kinds of candy, and there are lots of different ways that I could split up this candy. Why don't you pause the movie for a moment and think about what are some ways that we can split this candy up. What are some different categories we can use? Pause now. Okay, I hope we're back. Here are some different ways we could split this up. So you could use whether it's chewy or not. That's one way you could split up this candy. Chewy, not chewy, or hard candy. You could say, is it red? Red or not red. That's one way you could split up this candy. You could also do fruity. These are fruity candies. So these are all fruity candies versus not fruity candies. You could do minty candies or not minty. So these are all just different ways that we could split up this candy. None are right or wrong. They're all just ways to classify, so they're all fine. They're all fine ways to classify the candy. So I'm going to show you a video. We're going to watch and demonstrate how to do this dichotomous key. So here we go. All right. Okay, so I've split the candy into two categories, and this is how we make the dichotomous key visually. So I've decided to go with minty versus not minty. So I have my minty candies. Wait a second. Oh, there you go. So I have 3 candies that are minty and 7 that are not minty. Now, those need to be broken down even further. So we're going to say, does it have a hole in the center or does it not have a hole in the center? Now, the only candy that is minty and has a hole in the center is this one. It's the only one that fits in that category, so we box it. Now we have 2 that do not have a hole and are minty. So we got to split those up. So we've got a red candy and a green candy. Red stripes, green stripes. Now this is the only candy that has red stripes, does not have a hole in it, and is minty. So we box it because it's the only one in that space now. Now let's look at the candies that are not minty. I'm going to split them up into chewy candies versus hard candies. So my hard candies, I have 4 of those and I have 3 that are chewy. My hard candies I'm going to split into fruity versus not fruity. A couple of them are not fruity and one of them is fruity. Okay, now I'm going to pause here for just a second because between these 2 candies, oops, here we go. I know that they are both fruity, but I don't know exactly what flavor this is. And as a scientist, if it's not something I can directly observe and clearly communicate and clearly observe, then I can't use that as a classification. So I think it's pineapple, but I'm not totally sure. I know it's a fruity flavor, but because I'm not totally sure on the taste, I can't use that as my observation. So instead, I have to use color as my characteristic that I use to split them up. So one of them is purple, and one of them is like whitish yellow. Kind of looks white on the screen, but in person it looks a little bit yellow. Okay, my not fruity candies, I have one that's cinnamon and one that's butterscotch. And now each of my candies is in its own category. So I can box all of them. I started with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 candies. So I should have at the end of this 10 boxes. Let's see. Okay. So the only thing that I would have left to do is my chewy Starburst candies. So maybe we could think of some ways that we could split those up. Okay, so maybe we could do lemon flavor versus non-lemon, and then split that into strawberry versus cherry. And then I would have those 3 in their own boxes. And that's how we would finish the dichotomous key. Now, for your homework or for your entrance slip tomorrow when you come to class, I want you to bring a way to split, write down at least 3 different ways that you could divide these items. Okay, so I'm going to give you some characteristics of these items just so you know what we have here. Okay, we have an almond and coconut granola bar, fruit and nut bar. We have some toasted cheese and peanut butter crackers by the Lance Company. And we have some peanut butter crackers Ritz. So your homework is to bring in a note card or a piece of paper or a sticky note that tells me 3 ways that we could break these apart. How can we split them up? What are some different characteristics that we could use to split up these snacks? All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good night.